Cheers. Welcome to the Voluntary Virtues Network. This is Fireside Philosophy. I'm Steve, and I'm here with Mike.
Yo.
Kevin. And Matt.
Cheers.
And I am drinking Double Bastard today. New release, right? It's the New Year's release.
I believe it just came out yesterday. 2014.
Cilantro, ever so delicious.
Oh, so
Pretty
tasty.
freaking good.
11%. Ooh.
It's
so
up to
good.
11% now?
Yeah.
Wasn't it like 10.2 last time?
I think last year's was up there too, but a few years ago they changed it.
Sip it slowly, savoring the flavor.
I'm gonna have to switch. Mine's 5.5%.
Boop boop boop.
Boys.
That's like half.
It's, yeah, more than like half.
That's why I said it laughing.
Anyway, we're going to be continuing our talk today on the 3 things that are changing the world. This week we're talking about Bitcoin and related currencies and technologies. Money is a big controller in the world today. It's one of the main ways they use the elite or government or whatever you want to say, Illuminati.
The powers that be.
Whatever.
Yeah.
is
favorite term
controlling
is.
the currency. Bitcoin is a good way to circumvent that power. For those of you who don't know what Bitcoin is, how it works, Kevin, could you kind of give us a quick rundown on the blockchain and how that works?
Right. Let me gather my thoughts here.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the
Oh,
spot.
that's fine. So
Kevin, say everything you know about everything now.
Explain the internet. I hear it's a
series of tubes.
It's a series of tubes or something.
Series of interconnecting tubes. Do what now?
So Bitcoin works by on top of these tubes that are the internet.
On top of the internet, which is a series of tubes. Okay, continue.
So basically, I'm not an expert in Bitcoin, but the way I understand it is that essentially there's somebody has a wallet. That wallet is a cryptographic key, which then is used to sign transactions. So, for example, if you're transferring, just as an analogy, if you're transferring money to somebody, you want to know that you own that piece of money that you're getting transferred. So the way that's done is that this is why Bitcoin's called a cryptocurrency. It uses cryptography to essentially prove mathematically that a transaction is what it says it is. And the way it's also decentralized, so there's a public ledger where every transaction is recorded, and this is called the blockchain. And essentially there's a group of Bitcoin users which are called miners, and miners are looking for a complex mathematical formula, let's say, and as they're doing that, they're essentially supporting this blockchain. And this blockchain is essentially distributed across anybody who's running Bitcoin and these miners all across the internet. So, and essentially it's kind of it's a really fascinating way to show that there's some truth about the world. It's essentially consensus through everybody that has the blockchain.
And I guess the important part of that is that every single Bitcoin transaction that has ever happened is recorded and publicly available.
That's right.
So, you know, not to downplay Bitcoin, but it is very important to say that Bitcoin is not completely anonymous as itself. Because
it's not at all anonymous.
Yeah, it's completely
exactly.
anonymous.
Because if you know what somebody's Bitcoin address is, you can find out exactly all the transactions they've had. But there are ways around that. You can anonymize your transactions, and then that does kind of slow something down if somebody were to be watching you.
Well, the actual transaction is still seen. It's tying the numbers to the people
Exactly.
that is the difficult part, which helps with staying anonymous.
Yeah,
But none of the transactions are anonymous. They're all out in the open for everyone to see.
yeah,
Which is why it's less likely to harbor corruption.
right, because you can see where it's going and you can track it. And
Unlike money from central banks, which is, shady to say the least, their money creation, and what actually is happening with large amounts of money.
yeah, that does go to kind of. I think one of the most things that is talked about the least, but is almost the most important, is that when you control the money supply that most people use, which is what they do, most people use U.S. dollars. That if you can control the supply of that, you can control not everything, obviously, but most everything. And then you have it. You tie that to the creation of the Federal Reserve and these different central banks. All go back to different families with a lot of wealth and all that. And then you get back to allegedly a quote from I think it was Mayor Rothschild that said that I care not who wins the election. I'm paraphrasing. I can't remember exactly what it was. I care not who runs the country. Give me control of the currency, and that's all that matters. And so that does say a lot that. If we want to be more free in the future, we have to recognize the fact that the control mechanism is the one that most people don't think about the most, and that's the thing, that it's a series of ones and zeros that they say this is money because we say it is. At this point, it's probably less than 3% now of U.S. currency is actually physically printed notes. The rest of it is ones and zeros going back and forth between accounts.
So let me throw this to play devil's advocate for a minute.
Fair enough.
How is that different from Bitcoin, which is just ones and zeros going back and forth?
The difference is that it is decentralized. There is no one person or one group of people controlling where the Bitcoin goes or another cryptocurrency goes or how it's created.
Or the information about it.
There's
no secret meetings behind smoke-filled doors.
Yeah, exactly. There's no bankers smoking cigars in a bar somewhere in New York City, secretly coming up with a plan of this. You can, if you want to, you can actually go find the original white paper for Bitcoin, and it's a couple hundred pages long. Am I right about that? It's
Much less.
It's less than that. Okay.
It's very complicated mathematically, but it's very short.
Okay. So, but the thing is that anybody can look that up. Now, on the obverse, I dare you to go ask the Federal Reserve, hey, can you tell me exactly where the U.S. dollar comes from? And they will give you the most roundabout answer you've ever heard in your entire life. And you don't need to do that personally. You can look into, a good example is A Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. He talks about at the beginning is that they give a roundabout answer of the U.S. dollar is backed by U.S. bonds. Okay, well, what are those bonds backed by? Oh, those bonds are backed by U.S. dollars. What? So the debt to pay the U.S. dollar is backed up by U.S. dollars, and with a straight face, they'll be like, yeah, you got it, that's it, and you're supposed to accept that as an answer of being somehow rational, But yeah, so that's the difference right there. Is the fact that it is anybody, if they want to, can download the Bitcoin client or another cryptocurrency client if they don't like Bitcoin for whatever reason and create their own.
Yeah, that's worth kind of pointing out, is that Bitcoin is completely open source, and there are what are called forks of the Bitcoin source code, which is what Mike's talking about. And there's some weird ones like Dogecoin, which is a funny dog looking thing. I like that one.
Litecoin.
Didn't they buy like a NASCAR?
Feather
They
coin.
bought the
Yeah.
advertisement on a NASCAR car for that or something?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
One point about control, it's worth pointing out that if you read that original research paper, he or she or some group, we don't know, but they're very clear that if somebody controls, I think, more than 50% of the processing power of the Bitcoin network, they can control the protocol.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's almost happened before.
Yeah, well, I think
But see, that's a point in Bitcoin's favor. When anytime a group started getting close to 51%, people automatically bailed because they don't want Bitcoin to be controlled.
right.
Yeah,
The-
that definitely
the-
seemed to be the reaction that I heard.
the whole thing with Bitcoin is it's ruined if it's controlled. So it is in everyone's best interest to keep it uncontrolled, and thus avoiding that 51%.
And it does all, even for the people who do reach that point, it's bad for them because you don't want the currency to crash.
Right.
Right.
So it's not in their interest to have that be the case.
I think we had a question from our live studio audience.
Well, I would like you to restate that was an important piece of a puzzle.
Okay.
I didn't catch it. So can you say that again about the 51%?
So I don't know the exact details, but if you read the original Bitcoin paper,
Right.
it will. I mean, it's very clear that there is. I don't know if this was a design feature
Right.
or if it was just something that can't be worked around mathematically. But basically, if somebody can change, I don't know what the 51% exactly
If
is.
you're, I believe it's the miners.
yeah,
If you're
it's a 51%.
basically if you're the
Okay.
one verifying the transactions,
Right.
if you're over half of them, then
You
you're
essentially
going
can double spend your Bitcoin
Yeah.
if you're over 51%.
to, yeah.
And you can, in fact, I think, change old transactions.
It's
That's
something that if it happens, then it would be very.
Is it only a minor that would do it?
That's my understanding of it, at least.
Yeah, this is
All right, people
talking
who are
specifically
watching this,
about.
Please, and you know what it is, please put some comments in the...
Yeah, what I'll do is because I remember the paper, so I'll look up the paper and I'll add a
I
comment.
appreciate
There we go.
But I think your points are valid that it's unlikely and everybody's interest is against it, but
that. Right.
it's worth just pointing out.
And,
Yes,
and,
it is.
and it would be something really obvious to say that I think if you're dealing with any sort of new venture of any sort of amount of money that is, would be, able to, if you lost it, harm your livelihood or anything like that. If you found out that a group of people controlled more than half of it, and you didn't know who they were, or you were unaware of like their nature and all that sort of stuff, and you didn't know you trust them, would you still trust that currency? So at that point, like, that's the thing that, as I see it, that it hasn't happened yet, and I doubt it ever will, that if one person or a very small group of people who, aligned with a certain interest controlled more than half of a certain cryptocurrency, I don't think people trust it, and very quickly they would move on to something else.
Well, don't you think that they could do that now? With all
It
Morgan
has.
Stanley and the ones of these banksters. They could just
Well, no, that's a good point. When Bitcoin was getting up to be like above 1,000, last year, something like that, J.P. Morgan Chase, which should tell you everything about nefarious people if they have their name J.P. Morgan attached to it. J.P. Morgan want to start their own cryptocurrency. They're talking about it, and see the thing, and it was really interesting that they're trying to patent it, and the way they're trying to patent it was they're almost trying to challenge Bitcoin on it, and they couldn't be. If I remember correctly, they were not allowed to grant a patent on it.
Yeah.
But they filed the patent like 25 times.
Wow.
Like they were rejected, and they just filed the exact same thing
Maybe
over
it'll
again.
slip by 'em.
And the patent office was somebody at the patent office had like some virtue or something. It was like, no,
Yeah,
you're
that
doing
doesn't seem-
something that you're trying to sneak. You're trying to be sneaky and get around something that is obvious. Not.
Yeah.
But I think the other important point is that Bitcoin is just really the first in this
Yeah.
collection of. So maybe this is a flaw in Bitcoin. Probably not, but maybe it is. And then another cryptocurrency could come up that solves that problem. So it's kind of the beauty
I
of.
believe that could even be solved within the Bitcoin architecture. I believe it was the other Kevin who discussed this. Was there may be a way to fix that? I don't remember what he said, but there may be a way to solve that particular problem within Bitcoin itself.
Right.
Because it can be updated, but of course, you make the wrong change, then it could throw off the value.
Right.
Well, the thing about the blockchain too is that the possibilities with it aren't just monetary. You also have what's that other company? Ethereum.
Mm-hmm.
With their change, and I don't understand it exactly, but you can add more per chain than you can with Bitcoin, which opens up the possibilities of self-regulating contracts, so that you don't even have to rely on the U.S. legal system or any legal system to enforce contracts anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's going to be black and white. If these parameters are met, then these Bitcoin or whatever money you're dealing with gets transferred to this wallet. If they're not, then it doesn't transfer.
Yeah.
And that could be used from anything from like escrow or any kind of contract that's a simple transaction like that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
No matter how many parameters you have.
I mean, that's the thing, is that with all these different cryptocurrencies, the ledgers are all public. So, if you say, like, you had an agreement to, say, sell a parcel of whatever property, be it, a plot of land or, an expensive car or something that's worth it to try to go to an arbiter for,
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, I feel that this person has not gone through with their contract. You can say, like, well, they said, if you had some sort of agreement, and obviously if you're dealing with something that is a large sum of money, you should probably sign a contract involving it. And if you said, like, well, hey, this person agreed to pay me X amount of money on the 15th of, let's say, November, and they didn't come through on it, you could show them, hey, so this is the wallet that I was using for this agreement. This is what I sent them as. This is where I want them to send the money. 15th of November, I see no transaction there. They never sent me the money. You have an agreement to, it would probably be smart if you're writing a contract to be sent in cryptocurrency that you're saying that, like, I want it to be sent to this, not this address, And
That's not at all what I'm talking about.
okay,
I think he's talking more about automatically fulfilling contracts.
Like,
So basically, you agree to terms, and then it automatically takes the Bitcoin or the cryptocurrency and transfers it to the other
Right.
one. Where there's no human who actually has to go and fulfill it. You both agree to terms, and it does it.
Okay, so it was a program written to go boop boop ba doop.
Yeah,
Right.
we agree on this
once
date.
these
this
terms
is
are
gonna happen.
met, the computer will automatically send Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And you this could be fairly complicated. Like, if this happens and you send this much to this wallet, if this happens you send this much to this wallet.
It's similar to how I think it's similar to how stocks are actually held managed by computers now.
Sure.
Where that when certain things are met, they sell or automatically buy or do all sorts of things, but all in very fast intervals.
On a side note, high-frequency trading machines,
Yes.
the entire stock market is now a scam. Don't buy stocks, everybody. Get out while you still can. Anyways, so, yeah, back on that. So I kind of think of, like, so when you're sending the, the program is written to send the Bitcoin as part of whatever contractual agreement. In my mind, for some reason, I still kind of, like, hear that, like, dial-up modem of, like, shh. Oh, I made it. Okay, it's there. Like, is that just me, or am I the only one thinking that, or maybe I'm just dating myself? I don't know.
You are dating yourself just a little.
No, damn it.
I saw a breakdown of what all those sounds actually mean.
Tell me.
Very
What
interesting.
what
I
is
couldn't
it?
tell
What
you
is
all.
it?
I didn't care enough to be.
No, so what does it mean? I'm kind of curious. I need to know
It just
now.
basically is running through authentication with the network.
Okay, all right.
Robots. Robots.
We'll get to that later. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
We still have time for robot sex.
Yeah, I want to get into the idea of like a Yelp type review for reputation.
Right on. Yeah. No.
Um,
That's important for sure.
I think the blockchain technologies could be used for something like that in lieu of the current kind of government regulations.
And I think there's an example of that. If anybody remembers the Silk Road, by the way, the gentleman on trial for the Silk Road, if you have the ability to support him in his legal defense, you should, because Ross Ulbricht, right?
Sounds
For
right.
Silk Road, is Ross Ulbricht,
Sounds
I believe
right.
is right. But the
Allegedly.
the Silk Road had a ratings reputation thing similar to Amazon or eBay and all that, and now that's in a realm that most people think to be so shady that you couldn't possibly conduct yourself.
Yeah,
You couldn't possibly conduct yourself in a professional manner, but yet you could go on the Silk Road, not saying that I or anyone else here has accessed that information or acted upon it, but you could
You read this somewhere.
Yeah, I read this somewhere on a completely unrelated site, but you could, have a rating of, whether or not this person was reliable and would deliver upon what they said they would deliver upon. And, and it was a star rating in a very, cheesy sort of similar way to eBay. Like if somebody had a 3-star, you'd be like, I don't know, but 4 or 5-star, you'd be like, well, yeah, sure, everybody says they've gotten what they've gotten, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. So your rating would be tied to your wallet then?
Most likely, that's what I would think. Yeah, I think
Something like that.
if somebody were to start changing their wallet a lot, they would either be trying to hide something or they would be very smart.
Or it wouldn't have a lot of reputation because it doesn't have many transactions.
Yeah, exactly.
You could
People
have-
would be kind of
you
leery
could-
about it.
Yeah, if you integrated a rating system into the blockchain, where that was then. I don't know how much that would actually add to the computing power and how that would change.
Well, this is more about in the future, post state, or semi post state, in a place where the state is becoming obsolete.
But if we could implement it now, it'd be even better.
Oh, of course. That's why we're talking about this, because what we start now will be built on for the future. And the more we're using things like Bitcoin, 3D printers, hemp products, the less will be controlled by the state. And the more people who do that, the more the state will become obsolete. And these are 3 of the ways right now that people can do things to further that along.
So I think. Okay, sorry.
Oh, that kind of rings a bell from back when we did that. What did we do? 4 parts on that. The 17 Beliefs to Freedom. Like the state is not going to collapse all at once. So when the ability for people and people who may not know that much to do with technology, any soccer mom, for lack of a better word, can set up a Bitcoin account. That is a sign of the collapse of the state. When you can do that so simply and exchange transactions without them really being able to do a whole lot about it, that is a sign of them saying they've lost control because they cannot stop it. Worst comes to worst, you change the currency, and then they don't even know what to do after that because the state always moves at a sluggish pace. They never move quickly unless they have guns.
In relation to technology.
Especially within relation to technology. The only time they move fast is if they know that person is there at that time and they have guns. Other than that, move slow as shit. Or slow as molasses, excuse me.
So I think on that
It's
point,
the internet.
Yes, it is the internet. Censorship, what?
it's probably worth pointing out how do people actually use Bitcoin practically. The soccer moms, all soccer moms out there, listen up. So the way
And everyone else.
and everybody else.
To pay your son's season, you put in this address, right?
Right. That's one way to do it. So basically, there's a couple ways to use Bitcoin. One is to go to bitcoin.org or other software packages. If you just search for Bitcoin wallet, Airbits is a good way to find merchants in your area that offer Bitcoin, that sell for Bitcoin. So the way to get Bitcoin is you need to either get somebody to give you Bitcoin or exchange currency for Bitcoin. And there's a couple.
Exchange anything for Bitcoin.
Exchange anything for Bitcoin, right. So if you know somebody that has Bitcoin and you want to give them something, they'll give you Bitcoin. Then essentially you just use the software and you give them your wallet, and then they just send you the Bitcoin, and then you have it. Then you can use it. Or there's some services, I'm not affiliated at all with them, but just search for Coinbase and similar services where you can pretty easily get Bitcoins and use them.
And if anybody watching this who's super paranoid about Bitcoin, and I understand the mindset to a certain extent, like, okay, it's kind of weird. Who's Satoshi? Is he a person or a group of people? All this, back and
Who
forth.
is Satoshi, Mike?
Nobody knows. So
No, but who? What are you talking about, Satoshi?
Satoshi
Satoshi Nakamura.
Satoshi
Nakamoto?
Nakamoto. I was allegedly the person who submitted the original white paper for Bitcoin at a technology conference in Tokyo in 2009, if I remember correctly. But so if anybody's like really super leery about Bitcoin, I always recommend to them to just go. The website is blockchain.info, and if you go onto that website, you can look at every single transaction that is currently going on in the blockchain. And you think like, well, how is that supposed to allay somebody's fears? I guarantee you watch the blockchain for 5 minutes, you're going to see a couple transactions that go across that are like a couple $1,000s, sometimes 25 grand, sometimes 50 grand. I've seen a couple where I was just looking at that and all of a sudden plops up $150,000, just goes up on that blockchain list real quick. If it's not reliable, who the hell trusted enough to send $150,000? Apparently, somebody trusted enough, and enough people trusted enough to be sending that amount of money on a fairly frequent basis. So that's the way I look at it. That if it's that unreliable, who's sending that amount of money?
Well, to be fair, the price is somewhat volatile.
Yes,
and it
correct.
is fairly new, although I believe they passed the halfway mark.
Yeah, that was a couple months ago, something like that. Yeah.
By halfway mark, you mean the number of Bitcoins that are to be released?
Right, so that's worth pointing out. Is there's a fixed number of Bitcoins, but they can be chopped up into really tiny pieces. So essentially, there would be kind of natural deflation in a healthy way.
And the purpose of limiting the amount of Bitcoins is it's a fail-safe against inflation, right? That nobody could just be like, oh, I'm going to create Bitcoins of no, without doing the work with their GPU or their CPU to create the new ones through the client. They can't just fabricate it out of nothing.
Yeah.
Kind of like fractional lending.
Yeah. We're trying to avoid that nonsense. Yeah.
Yeah. No fractional reserve going on.
Right.
The opposite of what we want.
Although I think fractional reserve type lending could exist in Bitcoin, couldn't it?
It could, but judging from past history, I don't know how many people would be willing to involve themselves in that sort of scheme.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think you'd have to. I don't know how you'd set that up, but.
I mean, there's been
wouldn't
No, you're right. I don't think it could be done. It has to be one for one.
Yeah, I don't think there's any fractional reserve. That's one of the big pluses to it.
I mean, you've got plenty of very smart people being involved in that sort of a scheme in the past. I mean,
but you can't transfer Bitcoin that you don't have. That's the
yeah,
problem.
but
And you
you
can't
could say,
create Bitcoin out of nowhere.
but somebody could say
They can make a
like,
promise.
I have a
Yeah, I see
collection
what you're
of
saying.
Bitcoin that I'm going to transfer.
No.
Here's my futures. Let's
But
do a futures trade.
It wouldn't be
Let's do
based off
something
like
that.
the idea of it. It would be based off somebody agreeing to pay someone in the future a certain amount of Bitcoin.
Based
type
on a
deal.
contract that might be a little
Yeah.
bit leery.
It
And
A
wouldn't-
contract for robot sex.
Robot sex.
robot
Yeah.
sex.
I wonder.
Do we have time for that?
Like,
or
would there be
do
just
we-
like a QR code on your
Would-
chest and you just scan it?
And you could pay in Bitcoin or alternate cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, I mean, so is this now when you're
stick
paying
that
in Bitcoin for robot sex? Is this something where like is this gonna be on a card, and you give it to the robot of your choice and say, does the robot have laser eyes and scan the QR
Right.
code,
Laser
or
eyes is a
or,
good
or is there like
question.
is there like a
That's a good one.
slide thing where you go
Click
sync?
Yeah,
You know?
or those new pin type switching.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're out of time.
Ah,
We can't get
Damn
into
it!
that.
We were so close to
Every
getting through that
time.
today too.
Dude, next time.
Next time.
Next
Okay.
time we're gonna have to get on robot sex.
We really need to get on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a good chance
Next
next
time.
episode. Damn good chance.
Watch
Happy
next.
Halloween.
Happy Halloween. See you guys next week.
Cheers.